Welcome, and thanks for joining me. I'd like to talk to you today a little about your car's extended warranty. We've been trying to reach you. I'd like to sit you down and have a little serious chat about Automobilista 2 and the mistakes you're making when it comes to getting the most out of it. If you are like me and many sim racers, since you've been racing in the sim, you've stuck to cars and tracks you already knew. GT3s at Spa, Formula Ultimate at Monaco, Caterhams at Alton Park if you're a weird person like me who just loves a lower horsepower race car with an H-pattern gearbox. Whatever and wherever you're racing, chances are these are tried and true options, very familiar. You're going with what you know, and when it comes to Automobilista 2, I promise you this is a gigantic mistake. And if you haven't figured out what I mean yet, I'm talking about Brazil. Now, Reza Studios, they're a Brazilian developer, right? So they've spent a ton of effort and passion into recreating some of the best of Brazilian motorsport. And idiots like us, we're completely ignoring it. AMS 2 contains some phenomenal Brazilian race cars and circuits that sim racers are letting slip under the radar. Today, I'd like to shift your focus just a smidge and help you discover some of the hidden gems of Automobilista 2. Let's get into it. The first circuit on our list is the Autodromo Internacional Nelson Piquet, named after the three-time Formula One world champion. This track is known in AMS2 as Brasilia, called such due to its location within the city of that same name. It's a 3.4-mile, 5.5-kilometer track that hosts a variety of national-level series including Stock Car Brazil, Formula Truck, and Formula 3 Brazil. It has previously hosted non-championship rounds for both Formula One and the BPR Global GT Series. The circuit features 12 turns, many of them long sweepers, and not much in the way of elevation change. The first car we will be checking out is the Copa Fusca. This is a 123 horsepower, 830 kilogram, classic Volkswagen Beetle, known as a Fusca in Brazil. The car features a 1.6-liter, naturally aspirated inline-4 engine, mated with a 4-speed H-pattern gearbox. As can be expected on a classic car such as this, there is no traction control or ABS. The Fusca was introduced to Brazil in the early 1950s and was produced locally until 1986, then again from 1993 to 1996. These classic-styled Beetles are still raced in Brazil to this day.
10 minutes, you really need to get on with it. Be ready.
All right, here we are doing
Great.
10 minutes in the Copa Fusca at Brasilia. Definitely looking forward to this race. As I had said in the intro, I am such a fan of this style of car. You know, lower horsepower, H-pattern gearbox, gives you so much more to have to do during the race. You know, especially with having to manage the heel-toe shifting. And these cars have a ton of body roll. They get loose super easy. You know, back end dances around more than you would think that it would, although it's usually pretty easy to get back online with a little counter steer. But you do have to manage that body roll so you don't kind of just snap right back the other way. But I'm such a huge fan of this style of racing. And not to in any way take away from faster cars, you know, more modern cars with paddle shifters, all that. I love those too. And they each have their charms. But I always gravitate more towards this style of car, this style of racing. And these smaller tracks suit it quite well, although, you know, you get much faster cars through here too, these tracks. You know, Stock Car Brazil races here. Those cars certainly much faster than you get with these. But if you have not yet tried this style of car, this style of racing, I mean, not even just in this sim, but just in general, especially if you have an H-pattern shifter with a, you know, pedal set with a clutch, do yourself a favor, spend some time in it, learn to heel-toe shift. It is so rewarding when you do it right, and which I didn't do right there. Starting to get way too deep into that zone. I had to cut that off into that braking zone there. That tends to happen when I jabbering away as I'm trying to drive. There's a reason, I suppose, that professional race drivers don't try to carry on a conversation the entire way through a race. It takes a fair amount of your concentration away. But yeah, so if you haven't given this a shot, I definitely would. And you know, even if you don't have an H pattern shifter, clutch, and all that, and you're just using your paddle shifter, still give it a go. The racing that these type of cars provide, it's different than you get with, you know, your GT3 cars, your, you know, faster open wheel cars. They've got different handling characteristics that I highly suggest everybody try. And I will say, with these type of cars, these slower cars like this, it's all about momentum conservation. You've got to keep yourself moving as quickly as you can through the corners. Where you're going to lose time compared to the other cars on track is always, you know, going to be, at least the biggest risk of losing time is going to come in essentially slowing down more through those corners, because you don't have the acceleration. So if you don't maintain speed through the corners and your opponents do, that's lost time right there. So you got to manage that better than them, and that's how you win races here. You know, with this style of racing. And that's not always easy to do. I mean, it's not easy to do at all. But you get better at it, like with anything, the more you try it. And I will say a note about this track too is it can lull you into a false sense of security sometimes coming through these sections with those long sweepers that I talked about in the intro, which we got one right here, because they are often paired up with corners like this one. They have to brake a lot more for. You start getting that slide, that body roll, and if you overcorrect, that weight transfer is going to send you right off the track here. And it's really easy to kind of get, again, false sense of security through those wide open long-term turns and not prepare yourself well enough for the next few that are coming up. But you know, keep your mind focused on the race, know the track, and you'll be all right. This is another deceptive corner here. It's fairly long, fairly wide, but it's got just enough of a radius on it that you really need to treat it more like a double apex turn. Stick, you know, close to the corner or the inside.
5 minutes to go, 5 minutes left.
It's what I found to be the fastest line through it.
Fuel looks good.
I'm always arguing with myself internally on this one, is to stay in fourth or bring it down to the third. I think staying in fourth seems to be the cleanest way through. And
just done a 233.1.
You know, that's another decision you have to make when driving these cars, is do you downshift or not? So right here, I'm going to take that through staying in fourth. Now what you do is you lose out a little bit on some of that acceleration coming out of the turn, although you can pair that sometimes or offset that with not losing as much speed coming into a harder braking zone and having to check down, get your RPMs right, you know, in the downshift.
Good move, mate.
But if you know, basically the less you shift in a car like this, and, you know, any car frankly, but especially in a car that has a lot of body roll, the less you're going to upset the balance of the car. And that's always good. You know, sometimes losing a slight bit of momentum through a corner is worth not upsetting things too much. You know, there's a healthy trade-off there. You know, I found in my practice here that most of the times I went off, it was due to those scenarios where I was trying to slow down to get into the third gear, which basically with this car, this track, you're in third or fourth gear the entire time. But trying to get down to that lower gear and just offsetting things way too much, or upsetting, I should say.
Gap to Norbury behind us now, 0.7.
Could be a recipe for disaster. So sometimes I got to check my own natural tendency to want to get, you know, keep it within kind of the power band, and realize it's better if I keep it on the track, right? So So let's see if I can maybe catch this group ahead of me here. We've got about 3 minutes left. I've made up 4 positions already. You know, and that is definitely one of the things I like about the AI here in Automobilista. It's Automobilista 2. It's not difficult, I think, to find a competitive AI level. And if you're someone like me who I race offline, I'm an AI, you know, offline racer primarily. I'm in it for the experience, the immersion, not necessarily the competition. But I find enough competition even just within racing, you know, the AI. See, there we go. I shifted down to 3rd that time instead of keeping it 4th, which really I should do. As you can see, as I get into 3rd, it's already hitting the rev limiter.
Okay, Byron, the next car is Pushkin.
But I was saying about the AI here.
44.3. Your pace is good in sectors 1 and 2. Sector 3 is 1.3 off the pace.
Is I find it.
We're going to hold this position.
I find it easy to find a level that you can keep it at, like through an entire, say, championship, something like that. You know, that is one of the things that, you know, if you want to compare this to Project Cars 2, which also, of course, used the same madness engine here, then this, you know, sim does a ton, way more right than Project Cars 2 did. But I was a big fan of Project Cars 2. Actually, I've got more hours in that sim than I do in any other. And I do say sim and mean it. You know, some people like to throw around the Simcade term for Project Cars 2, which I think is totally unfair. I mean, obviously, no one's making that argument with Automobilista 2, and it's built off the same exact engine, has the same capabilities. Maybe Rises a little better at making the most out of it compared to Slightly Mad Studios, but it speaks for itself as far as its capabilities as a sim. I think where Project Cars 2 really let me down anyway, and the reason I bring this up for what I was talking about is the AI level. You know, I had no problem with the physics, handling, force feedback, especially if you ran like a good custom force feedback file, which I do here in AMS2 as well. Although I've heard the stock force feedback's pretty good. But in Project Cars 2, it was the inconsistency of the AI. You know, you could set it at a level, try to work through the career mode, and you'd find yourself having a good, you know, battle, good challenge, you know, one race to the next race at the same difficulty, finding yourself qualifying pole 3 seconds ahead, nowhere near anybody else during the entire race, which, you know, is boring. I don't know why anybody would want to do that. If that's the case, you might as well just be hot lapping. Like, I'm out here to experience the thrill of door-to-door racing. And Automobilista 2 just gets that so much more right as far as being able to find an AI level that works. At least per, like, car class I've found. Generally, if I find a level that works, I don't have to change it too much circuit to circuit. Might have to adjust it in a different class. You know, but a lot of that also may just come to be, you know, my own proficiency with, you know, those vehicles one versus another. Might not be a fault of the sim. So, all right.
13th place.
That was 10 minutes.
We'll get him next time.
At Copa Fusca, or at Brasilia, I should say, in the Copa Fusca. So, thank you very much for joining me. I hope this was enjoyable for you. I had a lot of fun. If this was new to you as far as this style of racing, these tracks, hope to see you again in my next video in the series. Have a great night, or day, whatever it is for you. It's night for me. See you later.